People who have experienced the butterfly effect. What happened? Longer version. I was just out of high school and new in town with no job. I was living off what savings I had left, and my account went below zero without me knowing. I was overdraft charged like 10 times and owed $300 plus. I went down to the bank, spoke with the teller, and she ended up being a lifesaver. She worked with me and got all the charges removed. On top of getting the charges removed, we got to talking about my situation, and she said that her son worked at a local restaurant and she would help me get a job. She was a woman of her word, and by the end of the week I was working full time. Fast forward, I meet a cool dude who worked there. We became friends. I introduced him to my sister. They fell in love, got married and had 2 kids. His best friend came into town for the wedding and I introduced him to my roommate at the time. They fell in love, got married and had 2 babies. I also got my best friend a job at the restaurant, where he met a girl working there. They fell in love, got married and had a kid. Right before I left, I got my roommate a job at the restaurant, where he met a customer, fell in love, got married and had a kid. As a bonus, my best friend, who I helped get the job, repaid the favor and got me a job at a different restaurant, where I met a girl, fell in love and got married. Received an incredibly high-paying job offer to run our biggest competitor's team. Told my boss, even though I loved my job, but it was more than double what I was making. Boss agreed to a reasonable raise, still not near the offer. I decided to stay because I genuinely loved my team/coworkers, and the money wasn't enough to leave that happy place. In exchange, I had to take up another account. That meant a business trip I didn't have in the plans. Went on that trip and met my future husband. Couple of years later, we went on our honeymoon at a new resort in St. Lucia. Ran into someone I knew from home/work. Turns out, the team that I'd been given the job offer for had made so much money that they had booked the same resort to celebrate. I sat there and went, wow, life is nuts. World ended up there, either way. If my biological mom hadn't asked her parents to watch me for a couple hours and then left town, I wouldn't have had the incredible and privileged life that I was given through adoption. My younger half brothers were raised by our biological mom and they are a total freaking mess. I'm more of a mom to them than their actual mom, and I would have been an absolute wreck also if she'd kept me. Instead, I was given an amazing private education, all the sports and musical adventures, and most important, a healthy, loving home with 2 parents who taught me that just because you share blood doesn't mean you love, and just because you didn't give birth to a child doesn't mean you can't be their parent. The wife and I were having dinner in Hawaii one night on vacation. As we were getting up to leave, I noticed she hadn't finished her beer. I told her she should finish the beer since we paid some ridiculous price for it. Fast forward 30 seconds, and we leave the restaurant and are walking the 3 blocks back to the hotel. About 50 feet in front of us as we're walking down the sidewalk on the left side of the road. A car comes flying out of a side street from the right and crosses through the street, hops the sidewalk in front of us, and smashes into a wall. If she didn't finish her beer, we would have been smoked by the car and most likely squished between the car and the wall. We always finish our beer now. Just last month, a friend of mine told me a story from his recent heartbreak. He, let's call him Mickey, had been with this girl, Minnie, for almost 4 years when out of nowhere, she told him she is leaving him and moving out. He had no idea the relationship was in jeopardy, but she dipped. Anyway, a few weeks go by. Mickey is hanging out with a coworker of his with who he had just recently met, and ends up back at his place just to hang out. On the fridge, he sees a note in Minnie's handwriting. The note detailed several issues in Mickey and Minnie's relationship, and so Mickey asks his new friend where he found this note. Turns out, this new buddy had gone to the same music festival as Mickey and Minnie a few months prior. The friend had found the note on the ground of the parking lot and thought, wow, what a sad and angry note. I'm going to keep this because it's so raw and interesting. The next day, Minnie came over to pick up some of her things. Mickey produced the note, and it led to a long tear-filled conversation about their relationship and what went wrong. They didn't end up back together because despite the pseudonyms, this is no Disney story. However, the resulting discussion helped them both achieve closure in a meaningful way. All because a random coworker found and kept her discarded note in a festival parking lot. This happened 2 days ago. It was early in the morning, and as I'm about to leave for work, when my mom reminded me that I forgot my water bottle on the table while I was walking out. For whatever reason I decided to go leave my backpack in the car and then walk back into the house for the water bottle. Well, that took about maybe 10 seconds total. It started to rain heavily on my way to work and couldn't see very well, but I noticed the brake lights of the cars ahead stopping suddenly and some moving off onto the shoulder, and decided to slow down and put the hazard lights on for the people behind to slow down. Well, turns out everyone was braking because a 425 car accident had just happened seconds before. All the cars were scattered across the highway, spread across the left/right shoulders, and another had hit the crash barrier. Basically a total bad mess. The drivers were still in their cars, I guess, processing what had just happened. After seeing it, I immediately started to think that if I hadn't gone back for the water bottle, there's a chance that I could have easily been in the accident, or at least even closer to it. It tripped me out for the rest of the day. I'm alive because my aunt was born. My grandfather was conscripted into the Romanian army as a medic, and his unit was one of the many acting as a defensive barrier, covering the Nazi supply lines to Stalingrad. She was born, and he was called back to Bucharest from the front. While he was on leave, the Russians launched Operation Uranus, which decimated the Axis forces. He received word that his unit had been completely destroyed. He was never reassigned, and in 1948, my mother was born. I'm also alive because a bunch of Romanian cows got sick. My other grandfather was a pharmacist, back when that meant actually making medicines. He was also a Jew. The town he lived in was largely agrarian, and their cow herds came down with some illness that was killing them. He whipped something up that cured them. The townspeople were very grateful to him. So grateful that when the chief of police heard that the Nazis were coming to town to take inventory of who lived there, he came to my grandfather's house with some train tickets for him and his wife. They escaped the Nazis and never got caught. My father was born at the end of 1945. I guess this is the opposite of the butterfly effect, really. Rather than one small action blowing up into a much more important chain of events, two hugely improbable events are eventually lead to my birth, and obviously my extended family as well. And now, I run ads on the internet. Got arrested for growing weed, moved back home. Got first job I could at IKEA. After working there for over a year, randomly decided to check Craigslist for jobs, and saw an opening at a cafe and they were hiring right then, so instinctively went for it. The cafe was connected and owned by one of the most popular brew pub/beer gardens in the area. They hired me to host there, quickly worked my way up the ranks to eventually bar manager. Met girl of my dreams. We are now married with 2 amazing kids. Opened 2 more restaurants with them, and currently assistant director of operations, overseeing 3 restaurants, 3, 5, and 8 million a year in sales. Love my job, love my family, love my life. No idea what I'd be doing if I never got arrested or never applied for the cafe job. Went to a soccer match on a Thursday night in August 2010, after years of turning down invites from multiple groups of friends. But this time it was for someone's birthday and they gave me a ticket, so I said WTHOK. Fell in love with my local team. I had watched soccer in HS and college and of course the World Cup, but this was different. I rekindled friendships from years before through our mutual support of said team. Made new friends. Experienced new things because of friends and team. Drank more than I usually did. In January 2016 I got laid off from a job I had grown to hate after 8 years and a lot of rounds of layoffs, just waiting for my number to get called. That March I was getting antsy and bored at home because I was trying to save money while still looking for work, and decided to get off my couch and go to an off-season supporters group meetup, which I usually don't like to do because I'm not good at the social skills, and if I hadn't been unemployed I know I would not have gone. But that night I met the woman I instantly knew I was going to fall in love with. Got a new job. Quit drinking. Finally went on a date with her 6 months after meeting her. Figured out I hated the new job. Quit that job. Moved to her city 35 minutes south in 2017 and have been working odd jobs part-time and doing gig economy stuff. I moved in 6 months later. We had a puppy magically fall into our lives within 3 days of just talking about maybe getting a dog, and it's my first dog ever, and I'm so happy about it. Got engaged. Got married in December, and I'm so happy about it. She kept telling me Reddit was actually good. I actually signed up. I saw this post. I replied, "Hi. We also just got a kitten." High school. I didn't get into the AP history class wanted. Changed up my schedule, including a different gym class, without everyone I knew. I was heartbroken. I really wanted to teach, and without an AP class senior year, I was screwed. Made a new friend in gym class, who was wearing a volunteer firefighter shirt. He had just joined. Seemed interesting, and he invited me to check it out. They paid for me to get my EMT. Fell in love with healthcare. Fast forward quite a while, and I'm an ER nurse and precept students and new nurses, teaching them how to survive in the ER. I also do public outreach and injury prevention. And I love it. Glad I missed out on my class. Obligatory, not my story, but my ex-wife's. We are still friends though. So I think the story takes place in the summer of 2003. Might have been 2004, not sure, but I think it was 2003. She was up in Cape Cod because her grandmother had a house out in Easton. Her whole family is up there visiting. Her parents, some cousins, a bunch of people. One day she borrows her mom's minivan to drive into Boston to meet up with a friend. She's driving back late at night and the road is pretty deserted. All of a sudden she sees some kind of animal up on the road ahead. She's not sure, but she thinks it might be a wolf. She slams on the brakes. I'm talking, shit goes flying kind of slam on the brakes. It's scary and chaotic and the wolf, or whatever it is, eventually runs off. She drives the rest of the way to her grandmother's house and tries to discreetly tell her dad what happened. But the oldsters in the room have cottoned on to the fact that a secret is being shared and they all want to know what happened. Eventually the story comes out. My wife's grandmother, who, God love her, would go on to live to the age of 97, responded by saying, "That's why women shouldn't drive at night." I found this response absolutely hilarious, and for years I enjoyed making reference to it at inappropriate times and circumstances. Anyway, everyone goes to bed and all seems well. Until the next day when my ex is driving the same van back out towards Boston. Now, Cape Cod is pretty much a one-way on, one-way off kind of an island. And I forgot to mention, but it's the end of a holiday weekend. I think it was the 4th of July. So traffic is really crazy. Eventually she is at a standstill on the main road for so long. She puts the van in park to wait. And then when traffic moves again she can't get it back out of park. Like, it just won't shift out of park, no matter what she does. She turns the car off and back on. Nope. Nothing. So now she has a car in murderously awful traffic. On a road that, if memory serves, only has 2 lanes to begin with, and she can't move. She can't get out of the way. She's stuck and making already bad traffic much worse. She's by the side of the road and people are driving by screaming obscenities at her. And she's thinking, believe me, I would love to fuck off right about now, but this car is broken, and I don't know what to do. So after what seems like forever, eventually these 2 guys stop to help. And they are trying to figure out what's going on. It's a really weird problem and it's taking them a while. And the whole time, my ex is thinking, this one guy looks kinda familiar. Like, she keeps eyeing him, you know, trying to figure out if she knows him. And if she does, where does she know him from? Now, at this point, I'll mention the answer to the car riddle, which the 2 guys sadly never figured out. It turns out, and I know how crazy this sounds, that the following had happened. When she stopped short for the wolf, a coin somehow got lodged in the cigarette lighter. It eventually caused a short circuit. The circuit that blew was also connected to the gear shifter. So when the short happened, she was no longer able to shift. Insane. Back to the 2 guys. The one guy notices my ex noticing the other guy and trying to figure out why he seems familiar. And so finally he says, "Do you watch Alias?" And that was when my ex realized that one of the guys who stopped to help her was Bradley Cooper. Unfortunately, selfies weren't really the standard at the time that they are today, so she didn't think to include herself in the picture she took of the two guys. But she does have the picture of Bradley Cooper and his friend, the nice guys who stopped and tried to help her with her car trouble. And she didn't recognize him at all at the time, but much later she realized, from looking at the picture, that the other guy was Brian Callen. So, to review, some kind of animal was hanging out in a road on Cape Cod one night, and as a result my ex-wife met Bradley Cooper and Brian Callen. Like and subscribe for more Reddit videos.